Greetings, friends. My name is Eliu Perez, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Ardura podcast. Today, I have the privilege to be in the presence of a professional engineer in the state of California who has an amazing story to share with us today. Her name is Andrea Mosqueda, and I want to say to Andrea, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Andrea, I have seen you and followed you online. You have an amazing online presence, and the things that you're doing in the Bay Area are simply spectacular. You had an amazing engineering week last week, so we're going to get to that eventually. I would like to begin the program today with a brief intro. If you can tell us, please, your position within Ardura, what you're doing at the company, and what is your mandate inside Ardura?
Sure. So I am a project engineer. I currently work with the Public Works West Group in California. Primarily, we work on public works infrastructure projects, and I kind of consider myself to be a general civil engineer. So I work on anything from drainage to roadway improvements. We've done a lot of sound walls as well. So just kind of the whole gambit when it comes to structures and public works infrastructure.
Tell me, how did you come to Ardura? Tell me about your arrival at Ardura. How did that happen?
Yeah, so it's kind of a funny story. So everyone says the civil engineering world is a small world, and it really is. I started my career in 2017 and was working for a small consulting firm out in Southern California. And at some point, one of my colleagues, Lizette Bice, she joined that firm as well. She ended up leaving a couple years before I did. But when I was ready to make the move, I reached out to her as a mentor, asking her, hey, can you, take a look at my resume? Would you help me maybe, get it out there, see who's hiring? It was during COVID. So she did mention that, quite a few places had some hiring freezes. But after she got my resume, she said, hey, you know what? We like what you're doing here at Ardura. She was at Ardura at that point. And she said, we want to bring you in for an interview. So I interviewed with her and my current managers now. And that's kind of how it happened.
How fabulous. But let's go back now to the beginning of Andrea Mosqueda. I would like to learn a little bit more about your upbringing, where you went to high school, and how you ended up at Stanford University.
Sure. So I grew up in Gardena, California. Many folks probably have never heard of that city, but it's a small town just south of downtown Los Angeles. So there I grew up with my mom and my three siblings. I attended Los Angeles Unified School District public schools my entire life. I started at Gardena Elementary and then Perry Middle School, and then I ended up at Gardena High School. So at Gardena, I was very, very involved. I played soccer and tennis and was involved in a lot of community service, including Interact Club, which is a subsect of Rotary, which I'm also still involved in today. But anyhow, I really enjoyed math and science, knew that I wanted to go into engineering, but didn't necessarily know what. And so before I started high school, I was kind of given some advice and basically saying, if you want to go to a good school, you kind of have to have a game plan in mind and know what you want to do. So that summer, I kind of took one of those career tests online and said, well, you know what? I like math. I like science, kind of like art, but I'm not really good at it. And so civil engineering kind of came out as a result. So as a freshman, I knew that that's exactly what I was going to do. And I worked my entire high school career towards that goal and taking classes at the community college to advance my math. And so, through those efforts and my community service and my sports and kind of just being a well-rounded student, but I think also coming from a socioeconomically disadvantaged background, I think the schools that I applied to saw that, I didn't just have the good grades, but I kind of had the work ethic to back it up. So I was very fortunate to get into quite a few schools, a lot of scholarships, but ultimately I decided on Stanford, honestly, because they had a really good engineering program. But growing up, I was really into college football. And at that point, Stanford was doing really well. And so I wanted to be a part of that environment.
How wonderful. And tell me a little bit about your family growing up.
Yeah, so my mom was born and raised in Mexico. She's from the state of Durango. And when she was 14, she came to the US with one of her sisters. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to continue her education. She kind of had to come and work. And so she did that, and she had my oldest two siblings. And about 15 years later, she had my sister and me. So there's a pretty big age gap. But she was a single mother. So, throughout most of my childhood, she worked a lot. It meant, not really being able to enjoy her kids. And it also meant that my oldest sister, Gabriela, had to kind of watch us a lot and was essentially a second mother to me and my sister, who's just a year older than I. So that was kind of my childhood.
Yeah, and tell me about your arrival at college at Stanford, where you became an engineer.
Yeah, so it was kind of what I call a reverse culture shock. In Gardena specifically, it's pretty diverse, and I consider myself to, you know, like diversity, and I don't kind of stick with the same groups. And so when I then started college, it was diverse, but it was different. Definitely not the types of faces that I was used to seeing. And so that was a little difficult to get adjusted to. That on top of obviously moving away from home, kind of being by myself. All of my family was in Southern California. So I got a little homesick. And then you add the difficulty of a school like Stanford and engineering. It was quite a bit of a struggle that first quarter and that first year. It got easier in terms of, I was able to make friends. I kind of figured out, office hours and things like that. But engineering was still very hard. And I will say that it tested me. I think that even through my senior year, I was still struggling. But at Stanford, there's a saying in engineering, D's get degrees. So you could still get your degree as long as you have the minimum GPA. You're kind of allowed a couple of D's here and there. I had to take advantage of that. But ultimately, I did graduate, with the above a 3.0. And now it doesn't matter. I think back then I thought it was a lot more important maybe than it was. But I think just kind of like high school, I kind of let my work ethic speak for itself.
Yeah, they have that old saying that it's the C students that get to be the CEO of a company, not necessarily the A students, because they're a little more rounded on other things,
Mm-hmm.
and etc. Many of those C's or anything like that probably had to do with the other things that you had going on in your life that naturally affect the course of the studies. So graduation happens, and what does Andrea do right after graduation?
Yeah, so kind of to your point, I think part of the reason I struggled academically was because I had to work all throughout college. And so I think at one point I had like two or three jobs working 30 hours a week. And obviously that impacted my grades. Unfortunately, the jobs I had weren't internships. I needed a job that could provide me healthcare. And so when I graduated, I actually didn't have any internship experience under my belt. And that actually made it very difficult for me to find work immediately after graduation. So after I graduated, I went home. I kind of continued to work in food service. I was a barista at Starbucks for over 3 years, and that's something I kept on my resume for a long time, because I think working in food service really teaches you patience and obviously customer service. But I think there's some countries that require food service work of everyone before they enter, the professional workforce, because it really does teach you a lot. So anyhow, so I continued to do that until I fell upon an opportunity. There was a small local consulting firm that was doing group interviews for internships, for an internship. And so, I found it, I went in, and even though I wasn't a student, and technically that's what the position was for, again, they appreciated the work ethic, and I got the internship, and within less than 30 days, they offered me a full-time position as an engineer one. So that's kind of how I was able to get my foot in the door and start my career.
Tell me a little bit about becoming a professional engineer. How I know that California is a particularly hard state to get a PE license. How did that go for you?
Yeah, so here in California, you have to take the 8-hour exam. Once you pass that, you apply. And once your application gets approved, you have to take two more exams, one on seismic principles and the other on surveying. You are able to take your 8-hour kind of anytime you want after you graduate college. So I took my 8 hour, I think about a year or so after I graduated. And so I was kind of just waiting at that point to get my minimum 2 years of experience to apply to take the other two exams. So I submitted my application. I remember I took a photo of it on January 1st of 2020, because that was exactly 2 years after I started my first full-time job. I submitted that. I waited to get my approvals. And note that this was January 2020, right? So
Right
by
before
the time I
COVID.
got my approvals, COVID was hitting. And so that definitely put a delay on when we could test, where we could test, even just processing applications. Obviously offices were closed. So it did put a delay. I also happened to start my master's program at the same time. So it was pretty difficult to, go through my program, study for my exams. I was also planning my wedding, all in that same time frame, and also really involved with ASCE. So it was just a really chaotic couple of years of my life. But after it did take me a few attempts for both exams, but luckily I got my final passing score in, I believe it was November of 2021. So by my I want to say by my 27th birthday, I had my license in December of 2021.
I want to say congratulations. Not
Thank you.
everybody passes the PE exam,
Yeah.
so it's quite a feat, and we're so delighted to have you at Ardura. You are a living testimony of the American dream.
Mm.
The
Yes,
daughter of
I talk to my
immigrant
mom about it all the
and
time.
mom. You,
Yeah, I think we're very lucky, me and my siblings, that she had the courage to leave her country and come to a place that was unknown. And she just worked so hard to be able to, give us some stability, to be able to go to school and learn and not have to worry about, where we were living or what we were going to eat. And so I'm very, very fortunate. I know I owe it to her and her work ethic for where I am today.
Kudos to mom. I want to switch gears a little bit right now and talk about Engineers Week,
Mhm.
because I know you had an amazing week last week, and you held the Ardura flag in a fabulous way over there in the Bay Area. Tell me what went on. I know you had a busy week.
Yeah. So every year, we celebrate Engineers Week. Typically, it's supposed to be what would have been last week, the week of George Washington's birthday. If folks didn't know, we celebrate it on the week of his birthday because he's known as the United States' first professional engineer. But in San Jose, students actually get a winter recess during the week of President's Day. So we're able to celebrate RE Week a whole week early. So this year was our second Engineers Week in San Jose. I previously planned and led these events in Los Angeles before I moved to the Bay. But we had 4 days of events. We had an elementary school day, which saw about 80 elementary school students. That was a pretty interesting event because we had the 49ers Education Foundation come out and lead a super cool activity with the students. And I know that they were really excited to kind of engage with them. And then the second day was middle school day. We had about 90 middle schoolers, and we hosted them at the San Jose Mineta International Airport. So that was also really exciting. They were able to tour the airport ramp, which is, right up close to the airplanes, and they got to take photos and kind of learn about airport engineering. The third day was Girl Day. So Girl Day, or Introduce a Girl to Engineering Day. That's personally my favorite, and it's always our largest. We hosted 150 girls at a venue really close to San Jose State. So we were able to follow the event with a tour of the campus for them. So that was also a lot of fun. And then we concluded the week with our high school day. We hosted about 75 high school students at Valley Water, which is our local water district. They also had tours of their water quality facilities, and we learned a little bit about hydraulics and hydrology. And it was just a really cool week. All of the schools we invite are Title I schools, so historically underrepresented groups. And so it was really nice to be able to expose them to the profession so that they could kind of learn about what it is that what we do, learn about what it is we do, and hopefully see themselves in a similar position in the future. But obviously there's also some ulterior motive. Obviously, the civil engineering industry is in a severe drought in terms of finding civil engineers, and people are majoring in other things. People are maybe graduating with a civil engineering degree but not entering the workforce or staying in the workforce. And so whatever I could do to get those numbers up so that we can improve our nation's infrastructure, I'm going to do what I can.
I think a lot of kids are thinking that they want to become influencers or stockbrokers or something, and they're abandoning the traditional careers. I had no choice. My dad said engineer, doctor, or lawyer, and of course I wanted to do something else, but I'm glad he showed the way to
Mm-hmm.
the engineering profession because it's so diverse. There's so much that you can do inside the engineering world. And with this, I want to switch gears a little bit to your life at Ardura. Tell me, what are you doing these days? What projects are you working on?
Yeah, so I work on so many different types of things. Excuse me, right now, I'm working on, well, we worked on I want to say 1.5 mile storm drain project in Southern California. It's now in construction. And so we're getting a lot of RFIs from contractors, and it's leading to some redesign. So there's a lot of work there, but it's also work that takes priority and precedence. So even if I'm working on other things that need to get done, if something comes up with that project in construction, I got to jump to it. I'm also working on kind of supporting a lot of permitting for a lot of other projects. So there's a ballpark being built in Southern California, and so all the permitting that goes into that. There's another really cool project along the LA River. We're hoping to revitalize it as part of the LA River Master Plan. And so that's coordinating with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and LA County Flood Control. And so all of that coordination, it involves a lot of, just keeping track of my tasks, but also following up with all the other team members to make sure we're moving forward.
Andrea, if you had to pick one project that you have really loved to work on at Ardura, which one would that be?
Sure. So we've worked on quite a few sound wall projects out in for the city of La Cañada, Flint Ridge. And so it basically entails taking a noise study report that was conducted previously that recommends sound walls of certain heights along certain alignments, and designing it, doing the full 100% PS&E. So the project is essentially taken on by the city, but because it's in Caltrans right of way, it is a Caltrans oversight project. And so that leads to a lot of intricacies when it comes to how the plans have to be prepared, what sort of reports need to be prepared. But it also leads to some pretty interesting dynamics between, all of the players, whether it's the design consultants, the owner, Caltrans, all of the utilities that are in the area that, we may be dealing with. And so I personally really like that as a challenge. It's not super straightforward. I know that as a team, we had to learn how to kind of navigate that. And one of my favorite parts about it was that I was given quite a bit of responsibility in terms of leading that design. I would consider that to have been one of my first projects as a project engineer. So interpreting all of the reports and figuring out what the design needed to be and make sure that we were in compliance with all of the requirements, but then also coordinating with all the sub-consultants and the utilities and my team itself and other members of the team. I just really enjoyed it. I wasn't just drafting or designing on CAD all day. I got to really communicate and coordinate with, everyone on the team, which I enjoyed.
That's phenomenal. Have you had all the support that you needed from Team Ardura?
Oh yeah, my team is great. The fact that I'm able to work on so many different things, I think, is a testament to that. I'm obviously trusted to get things done, which is nice. But even just the fact that we're open to, say, hey, I need help with this. And if somebody's available, all right, they jump to it, right? Nobody's pigeonholed into any one particular, project or type of work. And I think that just helps the whole team flourish.
How would you describe your experience at Ardura, living in this company and trying to grow your career?
I mean, I think it's been amazing. I've had negative experiences working in other places. And so coming into Ardura and just seeing, it was a 180 in terms of the support I got. I never got questioned about why I wanted to work on a project or why I wanted to do, my activities with ASCE. And so Ardura has just been so supportive of my efforts outside of work with ASCE, APWA, but also within work. So if I say, hey, I want to learn how to write scope and fees, which is what I've been working on the last couple of years, they say, all right, let's do that. If I want to say, hey, I want to learn this new software, let's do that. When I decided to go in and get my structural master's, I said, hey, I have my degree now. I want to work on structural projects. They said, all right, let's make that happen. And I've seen that with other team members as well. They say, hey, I want to switch gears a little bit and try this or try that. And they work really hard to make it happen. And I think that's amazing because the more well-rounded we all are, the better we function, not just as a team, but as a company.
So you're a master's in structural engineering.
Yeah. So my first job was in water quality, which I still enjoy. I'm still very, very passionate about that. But I did have a goal growing up to get my master's in structures. And so I applied before COVID, obviously not knowing that COVID was going to happen, but then it did. And so when I got my acceptances, I had to take that into consideration because, well, now I would be going to school online. But it kind of worked out really well because I was able to continue to work full time. Go to school. And so I was able to do my master's program in 2 years at Cal State Long Beach. And I received that in the spring of 2022.
Congratulations again.
Yeah, it's awesome. I don't know. I get bored sometimes, and so I like being able to switch gears. Maybe I've been working on too much drainage stuff for too long. Now it's like, all right, now let me challenge myself and let's do this structural project now where I'm kind of working different parts of my brain. So I really enjoy that.
It's exciting to see your enthusiasm for the career and your enthusiasm for the company. What would you like to do in the next 5 years? How do you see yourself evolving in your career?
Yeah, so I'm still not 100% sure. I know that I would like to become a subject matter expert. I think it's hard to do that if I haven't picked a niche because I haven't. I like so many things. But I do want to, the saying goes, jack of all trades, master of none, right? Nobody gets the master of none part. But I want to be very uh, knowledgeable in a lot of different areas of civil with the old end goal of eventually managing projects and kind of understanding all of the different elements, right? So I don't want to see a project and only see the water quality or work on a project and only see the roadway, right? Everything has to work together. And so I think that's what's really cool about working on all of these different types of projects. I'm kind of getting towards that goal.
So, Andrea, this is exciting to see that you want to become a subject matter expert. We're growing a company. We want to create a 5,000 person company. This is what we have manifested, to our shareholders and to people in the company that we want to become that. And I see you as an important part of that growth. I see you as an important part of that growth. What would you tell someone who's out there in college thinking of taking on a job or possibly considering Ardura for employment?
Yeah, I mean, I would just talk about the amazing experience I've had, how well I've been supported in my growth, and just encourage them to apply. And if not, they don't join my team. I know that they're going to join a really amazing team in another state.
Wonderful. And another question that I wanted to ask you, seeing you, meaning, your presence within Engineers Week has to be an inspiration for many students. What would you tell a young girl, a 17-year-old that has a little bit of an inclination for math, science, and technology, who's considering pursuing a career in engineering?
I think I would start by expressing how important higher education is. So whether or not they even go into engineering, or maybe they start in engineering and then maybe they decide it's too difficult and switch, majors. I think just getting that education is so important. I think, we're kind of moving away from that, and I don't think that that's what's best for us. I value education so much, and I know that the children of immigrants typically do, because that's how we're going to get ahead, and these are typically the populations I'm talking to. So go to school, finish school. Now, if you're interested in engineering, you don't have to be perfect. I mean, look at my story. I got a lot of C's, I got some D's. I was on academic probation at one point, and so it was really difficult. But I just kept pushing, and I did what I had to do to graduate. And once that was behind me, I was able to take my role. And I think I tell a lot of people, realistically, you only use about 10% of what you learn in school in your first job, because you're going to start your job and you're not going to know anything. You're not going to know how to use the programs. You're not going to know how to fill out a timesheet. So if you could just graduate and get your foot in the door, as long as you continue to work hard and show interest and take initiative, you're going to go far.
That is just beautiful advice that, I'm hoping gets to the ear of so many kids that are at times afraid to take that step. They think, oh no, I cannot do it. Not quitting is probably the most important advice that you have just given them, with your message. It's, you have to stick to a dream. And I think that when you I think you carried the degree in your heart all along, and that really, it's really literally half the battle. So, Andrea, let's switch gears to the family side a little bit. I have asked you to pull together a slideshow of your upbringing and so forth, and I'm going to throw that here in the presentation. And I want you to. I'm going to go back to the very beginning. I see you there as a child. Obviously, mom celebrating you and giving you a few tips. And then I see the continued growth. Tell us about these pictures, please.
Yeah, so if you don't mind, I want to just talk a little bit about the previous one. So that was actually my first birthday. And it's funny because if you read the cake, it says happy birthday, Casparin. It's spelled with a G. So that's Casper, the friendly ghost, that they used to call me, because I happened to just come out really pale compared to my other family members. So, and then another thing, like, I just kind of also thought was really funny was that what's supposed to be a number 1 candle on my cake is actually a number 4 that they cut, because they just couldn't find the number 1. So I thought that was really funny. But anyway, yeah, so that's my sister, who's just a year older than me, and my mom. And then in the next photo, we're actually at a family member's house, and so that's my older sister there again, and then with my younger cousin. And I remember that red Silverado that's behind me. We used to use that to take trips up to Vegas and stuff. So that was a lot of fun growing up.
You're there with the overalls.
Yes, that's me in the overalls.
And let's go here. You started some field trips to water sanitation.
Yeah, so I used this photo because I was going through my elementary school yearbook, and I thought growing up I had zero exposure to civil engineering, but it turns out that wasn't the case. So I had completely forgot about this field trip, but in 5th grade we were able to go to a water treatment facility. And so you'll see there that's me in that top left photo with the hard hat on. We took a tour of the facility. And then I was obviously a goody two shoes. So on the top right, you see me holding the poster, helping during the presentation. So, I'm sure I had a lot of fun on that field trip. I don't remember it, but, it's cool that I did get some exposure to the field back then.
Let's go to the next one. Tell us what's happening there.
Yeah, so here, I believe it was my junior year. This is during our Club Rush week, and I was advertising our club, which was the Interact Club, which is kind of the high school version of Rotary. And so we were a community service-based club. I was really involved in Interact as a high schooler. I really enjoyed community service, and spent hundreds of hours every year doing events, whether I planned them or just attending city events that needed volunteers. And so I served as president. And so I think I was just trying to recruit more people to join so that we could grow our club.
Wonderful. What do we got here?
Yeah, so this is my senior year. I did play tennis for 3 years, and my senior year, we were able to go to the CIF championships. We got second place, but we did still get a really cool plaque and medallions. And so it was just awesome to be able to celebrate that win with our teammate. And our coach, Coach Kamiyama, who I still keep in touch with to this day, was an amazing figure mentor in our lives. He taught us discipline. He was just amazing, and I hold him in very high regard.
I'm sure he's going to be happy to see his name mentioned in this podcast, and you're going to make sure to get it to
Oh,
him.
I will. Yes, definitely.
Look at that. Look at
Yeah.
that.
So
Brad.
huge fast forward. I think I mentally erased the 4 years between senior high school and college because, like I said, it was really hard. But this is just my senior portrait, and it was such a sigh of relief to be able to get to this point. I know that it was a struggle, like I've talked about, and so being able to get here it felt really good.
You're beaming with pride in that picture. I can tell that smile is one of full satisfaction with something that you accomplished, like many other things that we have talked about today.
Yeah, and so this was the day of graduation. It was a really hot summer day, but I was so fortunate to have so many people drive out to Stanford and support me in my graduation. So this is a photo of me and my mom. I know I wouldn't even be able to put into words how proud she was. She loves to talk about, going to my graduation and just always talking about, oh, my daughter went to Stanford and yada yada yada. But yeah, it was just awesome to have my family there support me. It's also pretty cool. I built a little balsa wood bridge and put it on my graduation cap, so that was also something that was fun to do.
Hey, mom deserves all the credit that
Oh
she
yeah. Oh yeah, she does. She can tell. And so I always try to bring her to, events to give her the chance to. So in Spanish we use the word presumir. So
uh-huh.
she loves to presumir, man. So I let her do it because I know
Yeah,
she
yeah.
likes it.
Well, my mom used to call me into the comadre, comadre's house to say, "Hijo, speak English to the comadre," so you can tell how proud she was when I became an engineer.
I bet.
What have we got here?
So this was a little shoot I did right when I got my master's at Cal State Long Beach. I just wanted to take some photos to just kind of memorialize the event. And
You
yeah, I
did?
mean, my master's in structures was also hard. I will say I also cried one or two times when I couldn't get a concept or had an exam that I knew I didn't do well in. But it also kind of taught me perseverance because I stuck through it and finished my degree. So this is a groundbreaking for a project that I worked on that I haven't talked about yet. So this was in the city of Long Beach. It's a project site for a supportive housing facility that is now completed. We actually attended the grand opening a couple months ago. That brings in veterans who are unhoused and need supportive housing and houses them for either no charge or really low cost. And aside from the house, or I'm sorry, the units, they get mental health and career services. And so it was a really cool project to work on.
Outstanding.
And then this is me as a Rotarian. So after I graduated college, I joined Rotary. I'm been a Rotarian for almost 7 years now. And so this is a really cool project that we worked on. It's part of an organization called Corazon. And so we would take a bus down to Mexico for a day and essentially build a house, a pretty simple house, but it would, house a family of 3 or 4 people, typically a mom, a dad, and 2 or 3 kids. And as part of the program, they were, required to keep the kids in school. That was one of the stipulations. Like, hey, if you want to be a part of this program, you have to keep the kids in school, which is so important. Again, I talked about that already. But yeah, so we would do this once or twice a year, go down to Mexico, build a house in a day, and then take the bus back up. And I loved it. I'm not in SoCal anymore, but I hope if I get the chance to do it again, I will. All right. So this is an event. This was actually Engineers Week event. I believe this was back in 2022. And this was our Girl Scouts Day. So we hosted approximately 100 Girl Scouts at Cal Poly Pomona. And here I am leading an activity and, asking for some participation from the students. And I love this photo because you could see, all of the girls with their hands raised. Another Engineers Week event, this was actually my first. So this was actually in February of 2020. So a month before the pandemic hit, we were able to host about 120 elementary school students at LA City Hall. They participated in an egg drop build competition, and they were able to drop their egg from inside City Hall where there's a rotunda, so they could go take the elevator up and drop their egg. And so it was a really cool event. And this is kind of what inspired me to get really involved with ASCE. So prior to this, I'd attended maybe one or two meetings, but after this event, the rest was history, I would say. This was in 2023, so it was an Engineers Week that I chaired with my colleague Nikki, who's to my left. And this was our Girl Day event at Cal State Northridge. So here we are awarding scholarships to three girls that participated in the program. And again, I've talked about how important education is. So awarding them some scholarships to help them achieve those goals was really important. And this is our latest e-week. So this was a couple weeks ago. This was our elementary school day. We were able to host it at the Mexican Heritage Plaza in San Jose. We had about 80 elementary school students, and we were able to host them for activities. We had some presentations from some professionals. And yeah, it was a really, really fun event.
Congratulations. I think you have a passion for corporate social responsibility, and you live it, you enjoy it, and that's really what makes a difference. So, Andrea, tell me in closing a little bit about your involvement with ASCE.
Yeah, so currently I am very involved because since the pandemic, we found it kind of hard to get folks re-engaged. So currently I do serve on the board for the San Jose Younger Member Forum, the branch, and the San Francisco section. And that's aside from my work as Engineers Week chair. But, I think for me, I want civil engineers, again, to not just, do the 9 to 5. I want them to see and understand how important it is for us to give back. And so I hope that, one, by putting these events on and showing how positive of an impact we can make to the community, that it might inspire others to join me or join us as ASCE. And that's kind of what my goal is, to just get more people involved. And that's kind of why I continue to do it. Like you mentioned at the very beginning, I do have an online presence. And so I try to use that to my advantage and to the advantage of the profession. Say, hey, look at all this amazing stuff that we're doing. Join us. So
on behalf of Ardura, I want to thank you for your community work. I want to thank you for living corporate social responsibility. They say that corporate social responsibility is the entryway for some predictable miracles. And I think that you're doing something good in the community, and I commend you for it. Continue your passion and continue the things that you're doing. We at Ardura celebrate not only your heritage, but we celebrate your career, and we celebrate your participation with the community on top of all that technical skill and those fabulous degrees that you bring, and you make us a better company. Thank you for joining me today, Andrea. I look forward to continued conversation with you. I want to keep in touch. I want to meet your coach. I think that this individual is worthy of shaking a hand and exchanging some ideas about you and your career. And I want to congratulate you for an amazing career. I want to congratulate you for your presence that you have online. Continue on this journey because you're going in the right direction. Thank you for joining me today, and I look forward to our next presentation.
Thank you.